Hello there,
Hi.
friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. Serious business. Man, I shouldn't be serious. No, thank you. Thank you for joining us, friends, lovers. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. And you. I'm Robert Nasir.
I'm Robert Nasir, too.
Kinda. You know, you kindred spirits, right? Like minds. Are you Robert Nasir, too? No. Just funny.
I'm Robert Nasir.
It's been a heck of a day, but it's going to be a heck of a night, heck of a show, and we're glad to see you in the chat. In fact, see, Paul is in the chat, and I thought it was one Paul, but then Paul said, it's mellow, man, which didn't quite sound like the Paul I thought it was. So, Paul, give us clues. You don't have to out yourself, but there's more than one Paul in our circle. Glad to see you anyway. Glad to see everybody in the chat on this fine December what? December 1, December the 1st. It's the 1st of December. It's a new month. It's the Christmas month. We made it. We made it through Thanksgiving. Did you make it through Thanksgiving? Some of you in the chat I recognize are European. You may or may not be celebrating the same Thanksgiving holiday that those of us in the colonies do. Either way, it's a great time to celebrate because Christmas is in the air. I can smell peppermint. I can smell cinnamon. I can smell Christmas spices already wafting toward us. I hope you can too. If not, you will by the time we're done tonight. Now the season. Now the question. What is the question? Well, we'll get to that. But first, on this date, December 1st, Galileo begins observing the moon in 1609.
That was just like yesterday.
Well, this morning, Amy, of course, being a dancer, was out doing flamenco dance with her troupe. Lessons, classes, practice.
Yes, lots of footwork, a lot of stomping, because I love it. I love stomping. And so a lot of twirling, actually, this time, too.
Talk about being with kindred spirits. Be in a room with other dancers. That's got to be great. But I was not, because I'm not a flamenco dancer. But I was listening to, as I often do on Sunday mornings, HBL, Harry Binswanger Letter, Harry Binswanger List, the weekly meeting of the minds that he holds, and they were talking about AI. And the topic was artificial intelligence, changes that will come that you haven't thought of yet. You know, we've all thought about what AI is going to do in obvious ways. It's writing computer programs for us, it's writing music, it's doing all these things, but there are things we don't realize are coming. And one of them, for example, was copyrights. Well, what about copyrights? Isn't AI like ripping off everything? In fact, the only source of content on AI platforms is other people's stuff, and it picks it apart and remixes it and gives you answers based on what human beings have already done. But Harry pointed out, and this is good, AI systems already, we're using them to detect when, for example, a student turns in a paper that was generated by AI. You're a college professor or a grade school teacher, and
Yeah, you could do that now. I've actually, unfortunately, I had a situation where somebody actually turned in something, and I asked ChatGPT, I put it in there, and I said, was this generated by AI? It's like, yeah, it's a 99% chance.
yeah, it's not just about school. It's work stuff where you should have studied something or learned something or turn in a report. And AI generates it for you. You turn it in. And it's kind of sad, like all forms of cheating or plagiarism, because you know when the teacher reads it that he knows you didn't write it.
Yeah.
Teachers are not completely disconnected from reality. They know if you haven't learned something yet, and you turn in something that could just as well have been a thesis written by another college professor. In fact, in a sense, it was written by an aggregate of college professors. But the question in the mind of somebody who does that isn't, will the teacher know better? The question is, can I get away with it? And sadly, the kind of people who do that stuff don't even do a very good job of figuring that out. Well,
yeah, Christopher says, ChatGPT, make me an essay about the Civil War, avoiding ways to make it easily detectable. Can I do that? I'd say probably not.
Yeah.
Probably
if
not.
we can have ChatGPT tell you when another instance of ChatGPT probably came up with something, then in theory, ChatGPT can tell you how to use ChatGPT in a way that people can't tell ChatGPT used it. And that's the interesting thing, because patents and copyrights. Oh, well, if ChatGPT, and not literally ChatGPT, but if AI, if artificial intelligence platforms are going to be writing our music, writing our papers, how do we figure out if they have violated copyrights? What if they wrote something that's so close to something somebody else wrote that if I slap my name on it, and I'm not lying, I say generated by AI, but it's my stuff, my copyright. How can I be sure I'm not violating somebody else's copyright? And the answer is AI systems can figure that out. Now, that might have helped George Harrison back in the 1970s when his song My Sweet Lord got him sued by Bright Music, the publishing company, for the songwriter for the Chiffons song He's So Fine. And he got sued for copyright infringement by Bright Music, by the publishing house, for his song My Sweet Lord. Incidentally, and the reason I bring it up, on the HBL this morning, there's a big discussion we're having, I put in the chat a little comment. Yeah, I thought George Harrison was unjustly found guilty of that. Well, I got called out by Harry, actually, who asked me about that. I said, yeah, I see the similarities. I really do. But I don't think they were close enough. And the tunes were simple enough that he should have been found guilty and made to pay, $1.5 million plus a certain amount of royalties and whatever the penalties were. And some people disagreed with me. And so what I did is I took a guitar, I took a capo, did something I've never done. I've played both of those songs before, but I've never played them with a capo. And the neat thing about a capo for you guitarists out there is if you do that, you can really see the similarities between two pieces of music, because you can play them exactly the same way, even though they're in different keys, by just sliding the capo up or down the neck. I was tempted to do a demonstration of that tonight, but maybe I should make a separate video so we don't get a copyright strike.
Oh, right. Well, copyright strike on which song? Ha, ha, ha.
Well, then again, our videos aren't monetized. All of our money comes from Patreon.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't matter if we get a copyright strike.
I don't know. Should I grab your guitar?
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Tell us in the chat, should I do a live demonstration of this?
I think they want to. I think they want you to.
Galileo begins observing the moon in 1609. And here in 2024, AI is now going to do AI is going to do everything for us. That's the bottom line. AI is going to do everything that you don't want to do.
That's great.
It's going to happen.
I love it.
Including a lot of base level production. Because it's not just AI, it's automation, it's robotics, it's all of the ways in which we can produce the basic things that we need. If computers will get to where they can write better songs than I can, they can write songs that sound exactly like Lennon and McCartney wrote them, or Burt Bacharach, or pick whoever you think the great songwriters were. And more, they can create orchestral music. Pick your favorite composer, whether it's Bach, or Mozart, or Rachmaninoff, which is what it should be, or Tchaikovsky, or anybody else. Now, people say, in fact, Harry said this morning, the one thing about AI-generated music is, it probably sounds like it has no soul in it. It's interesting because I've already heard AI-generated music that definitely has soul in it, and you think, no, a machine can't do that. Well, the machine didn't do that. Where did that music come from? It is recombined by all of the music that has ever been fed into the machine, and all of that music was created by people who did things which did generate genuine human emotions. And occasionally the AI will give you a combination based on all of that will do the same thing.
Maybe. Yeah, so Christopher's question before about writing an essay about the Civil War, and I said, no, you can't do that. And he said, oh, no, I don't mean ethically. I guess I sounded harsh in my tone. So no, what I meant by that is that I don't think you can. It takes creativity, I think, human deception to say to yourself, okay, well, I want to actually cover this up and obscure the fact that this was created by AI or ChatGPT. It's going to register that it was created by ChatGPT, even if you ask it, please obscure the fact that it was created by you or by this. I don't think it'll work. It reminds me of the old Star Trek episode when Harry Mudd was down on the planet with the androids.
Oh, yes.
And Bones and Spock and some of the people, they were confused. They were basically overloading the android's logical interface. And anyway, it all led up to Spock saying to the androids, "Now listen to me carefully. I am lying." And the two androids just blew up or whatever, and they couldn't comprehend what he was lying about, or if he was lying about the lie, and it just exploded their android brains.
Yeah, except that ChatGPT, on the other hand, is already going to, if it doesn't already, have a copy of OPAR and HWK.
So yeah, it'll be ethical.
No, the point is it will be able to see around that contradiction.
Oh, yes.
Because both How We Know by Harry Binswanger and Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff explain why you have statements like, "I am lying." Well, if that's true, then you're not lying, but then you would be lying because you said you were lying and you weren't. And Harry and Leonard do a good job of sorting that out, of being able to say the statements aren't either true or false. They are without cognitive content.
Right.
If you tease out the definitions of every word you say, which is basically what you meant, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I just don't think you're going to be able to make this undetectable to other AI or ChatGPT or word generators that it was created by AI.
I think at some point anything will be possible. And provenance, not providence, but provenance is going to become, the ability to detect when something is real is going to become one of our most important traits. We will get to the point where you won't know who to trust or what is real. And what will matter more than anything else is your ability to see the full context of what somebody is saying to you or presenting to you so that you know whether it's real.
Right. Well, like we do anyway.
There have been forgeries and fakeries and plagiarism and copying for as long as there has been human communication.
Yeah.
So how do we know now when we read something on the internet that it's not just, The Onion or Babylon Bee, or somebody just lying and faking us out?
Yeah, the phrase, "this doesn't pass the smell test."
Yes.
Yeah, that's always going to be there.
Right. And they'll get ChatGPT to the point where it can smell. That is coming. They will dig them out of the old factory. So, okay, let me set Galileo aside for a minute. This is also the date in 1876 in which the first college football game was played on Thanksgiving. I think that's something to celebrate. I've got a link in the show notes, description on YouTube, description on Facebook, wherever you see the show notes for this show, about that first college football game. I love the idea of football on Thanksgiving because it's one of the only times I don't watch football, but I watched the Super Bowl, and we watched the Lions game on Thanksgiving.
We did.
And it was good. It was a good game. It seemed, because we came in late, we saw the Lions were trouncing the Bears. It just wasn't even going to be close. And then all of a sudden the Bears turned it around and they had a chance to win. Being that we're in Motown in Detroit, it was kind of fun that they didn't quite pull it off, but they were so close that it did make for an exciting game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they did not go into overtime though, and so it was.
They did they should have. They should have. I know 40-yard field goal, that's tough, but they should have tried for it because fourth down, what are you going to do? Jump forward to 1955. This date, December 1st, a very important day because this is the day that Rosa Parks said no.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's the day
nice.
she refused to give up her seat on the bus. For those of you who don't know, 1955 is not that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Legalized racism is not that long ago.
Yeah.
So when people talk to you about racism, it's very easy to say, no, there's no racism anymore. And in some ways, by law, there isn't. It wasn't that long ago that people thought it was reasonable to say, well, if the bus is full, the black people have to sit in the back of the bus. White people should be sitting in the front of the bus. And just saying that gives me heebie-jeebies to think there was a time, not just when people would say that, but when it was normal. It was accepted. So that bus, the bus that Rosa Parks was on when she refused to get up from her seat in the front of the bus and go to the back because some white guy told her, I want that seat.
Yeah.
That bus is actually at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah, it was a little bit more of a story with regard to that.
It's a great story.
But yeah.
In fact, the website for the Henry Ford Museum tells you that story. Amy, you could tell that story. But the website does tell it, and that's the link you see in the show notes there, the Henry Ford Museum.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how far we've come. Most things have gotten better.
Oh, gosh. You know, I'll tell you, I posted on Facebook. It was this video from 1983 about the Cabbage Patch Doll riots.
Oh, yes. Well, we've got to talk about Black Friday.
And, well, I hope this is an okay digression right now, but...
it's exactly what we want to talk about. You go right ahead.
You've got mothers and grandmothers, and also some fathers, too, at this store, and this manager is in the middle of this melee of people trying to grab at the Cabbage Patch Dolls. Now, let me just give you some context. Nope. Cabbage Patch Dolls they were dolls that had a soft body and kind of a hard head, and they were ugly as sin. They were terrible, but
they were
the
like
virtues...
little children born in a cabbage patch, I guess.
The virtue was that they were all kind of different, so a child could choose. And oftentimes parents would buy them, and they would choose the doll that looked... slightly reminiscent of their own child to the best they could because they were ugly. And what was fascinating was that the creator of these dolls, this guy named Xavier somebody, I forget, he tattooed his signature, Xavier somebody, on their butts, on their butt cheeks.
Good grief.
And they were kind of like increased the collectible idea of them and everything, and kids, I don't know, the marketing of course was really good. I remember back then, I was 10 years old at the time, and I remember it was quite enticing, and I wanted one. It's a long story. My mom ended up not getting me one, and she told me they were too expensive, and had a friend of hers actually create a doll for me that looked a bit similar to it. So I was happy enough, although I was used to disappointment as a child. I was not spoiled. Maybe in some ways, but most part, I was not spoiled. I did not get half of what I wanted, or even a quarter. Anyway, so this video that I posted on Facebook had all of these parents, just fighting one another. Just had this crazy stern look on their faces, like, really, really mean, and and they were fighting to get at these dolls, and there's this manager in the middle of all of this, standing up on like a chair or a box or whatever he was standing up, and he had like this baton in his hand, and he was basically not beating people with the baton, but basically instructing people to form a single line, and to be reasonable, and to not push, and all of this. So you'll have to catch that on my wall if you're not friends with me. But
this is reminding me of the film that we watched, Black Friday.
Oh gosh, that was so silly.
Which is not recommended, but it's a film. It's a horror movie about Black Friday sale.
It has Bruce Campbell in it, but he's less of a Bruce Campbell than.
Yeah, he's not very Bruce Campbell.
No, he's not.
In fact, when he first appears, I didn't realize it was him.
Right.
Yeah. He just seemed like some boring old guy.
He produced the film, I should say.
Yes.
And, it's a horror film and everything.
He co-starred in it, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, not recommended Black Friday with Bruce Campbell.
What's weird is that film was only made a few years ago.
Yeah.
Just before Norm Macdonald died.
Yes.
No. I'm now confusing that with Klaus.
Yes.
But yeah, this Black Friday film is recent. And Black Friday doesn't look like that anymore. Now, it wasn't that many years ago that you had stampedes at Walmart and stories of people getting stomped on as people rush it.
And people getting to Best Buy at midnight with a tent to sleep there.
Yeah, and you would have the sidewalk in front of electronics stores. People are standing in line in cold places like Southeast Michigan here. Yeah, tents. They would bring tents, pup tents to crazy. All that's over. No. Black Friday is now subsumed by Cyber Monday. Black Friday starts online on Friday, runs through the weekend. It's pretty damn cool.
It's
now, there's some things you only get on Black Friday. For example, I missed out on a fake Les Paul. Why would I buy a fake guitar? Well, because it's $200 guitar that looks like a $2,000 guitar. But it's not, and it doesn't quite play like a $2,000 guitar. Still, they call them Chibsons, these fake Gibsons. 3,000 of those were just confiscated as they came in through the West Coast.
What?
Off a container ship.
Why?
So who knows, if I had ordered one, maybe mine would have been confiscated too.
What, just for licensing, or?
They make them look, they actually put the Gibson logo on them. They are fake.
Oh, gosh.
They are absolute fakes.
It's like proto. Like the proto bags.
Yeah, the proto bag. Instead of the Prado. Prado bags, yeah.
So anyway, things have gotten
Which is why
so
you
much
need to
better.
you need to see the film Serendipity for that one.
Yeah. And no, people have, I mean, actually, yesterday I was at Somerset Mall in Troy, Michigan. Big, enormous mall, very high-end, a lot of high-end stores.
Beautiful.
And there's so many people there. We could barely find a parking space. Anyway, everybody was really, really good to each other. Nobody was bumping into each other. Everyone was super happy. And it was really festive. And I was really happy to see people, basically make certain, they would sprint to things. They would get their stuff, and they would sit down for like 20 minutes to rest, and then we'd get back up and then make another sprint to the other side. It was quite the marathon, but everybody seemed to be very, very good and patiently waiting in line, and it was wonderful. Yeah, it was beautiful, honestly. It was capitalism in all of its glory, and I loved it. But yeah, things have gotten a lot better, especially since 1983, and the Cabbage Patch Wars. So we had
Cabbage Patch Wars.
Yeah, Cabbage Patch Doll riot, actually. There were several. I guess, I don't know how many there were, but it was crazy. So we have some ChatGPT AI questions. Matthew says,
yes.
There was a court case reported in New York in which the lawyer used ChatGPT to research a point of law. The result was a list of seemingly helpful but entirely fictitious precedent cases. Whoops.
I can't imagine anybody. I can imagine somebody doing that, but I can't imagine anybody who would use ChatGPT and has not run into it just telling you outright nonsense. Not even lies, because it's a machine, just wrong answers. And it's always funny to have a conversation with ChatGPT, because you point it out and they're like, oh yeah, that's not correct. You just said that.
I have I go on Google and I research things sometimes, just, questions here and there, whatever. Sometimes I have seen it where I know the answer, there's an AI generated answer that's basically aggregating from multiple sources, and I know that half of it is just bunk. And
it's that smell test you mentioned.
Yeah, and Jennifer says, it's fun to admire individual human musicians, though, and AI music would remove that. Probably yes.
It's a real question of, once AI does all the basics, what's left? What do you do?
I mean, AI has algorithms, but it doesn't actually have an emotional mechanism encased in an organic body with a skeleton and a central nervous system and a brain. It doesn't have that. It's not going to produce the same kind of music. I'm completely convinced of this. There's music out there that I know of that is absolutely sublime, extraordinarily complex, emotionally dynamic, and I don't think any AI would actually be able to do that. I mean, they might replicate something that's already been made, but nothing that's going to really stand out, in my opinion. I think a lot of it is already being made, probably in a lot of ways, in pop music, and hence I'm not a big listener of pop music, of today's contemporary music. It's just not good. It's not satisfying to listen to. Let's see. Yeah, I think that covers those questions. So
well, I'm glad you said that, because we're moving in a particular direction here. On this date, you go back to the on this dates real quick, because on this date in 1953, Excuse me, sniffly day. On 1953, Hugh Hefner publishes the first edition of Playboy magazine. First centerfold, does anybody know? Tell us in the chat if you know who the first centerfold in Playboy magazine was.
Margaret Thatcher.
Close. And this ties in, jumping forward a little bit to what are we listening to this week? Cyan Banister.
Oh, right.
Cyan Banister is an angel investor, one of these rich people who goes out and does investing on other people's projects. You come to her company and you say, I've got this great idea and I just need $500 million to put it into effect. She's super smart, she's super rich, and she was brought up by the worst mother in the world who took her away from her father and then neglected her. Eventually, they end up in a courtroom where her mother says, I don't want to be this child's mother anymore. The child ends up out in the streets, lives homeless as a teenager, and it's a very interesting story on how that happens and how she turns it all around. And the strange thing is when you hear that story, you must think, the mother must be a drunk or must be really stupid or low class. The mother was really smart. At some point, she becomes a college I don't know if she was a professor or just a teacher. And Cyan Banister, this angel investor, this high-profile person, she's really smart. But she tells an interesting story about when she became spiritual, when she started believing in something more than ordinary life. She uses the word God, but she doesn't really talk about a personified God. Just, there's more out there than we realize kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that to me was interesting because I've been having conversations lately where I keep wanting people to go to the next step because there's more than the ordinary. There's more than the plain out there. And in this interview, Cyan Banister mentions, they talk about her growing up. They talk about what it's like to be homeless as a teenager and what her experiences were, her friends were, how she first got into selling T-shirts and she was designing them herself and doing unique things. And at some point, the story comes up when she first saw her first Playboy magazine. And her reaction was, these women in this magazine, they were beautiful, more beautiful than I realized people could be. Oh, Sam Heyer on the Facebook side got it. And Matthew Humphreys also. Marilyn Monroe was featured in the first issue of Playboy magazine. And that tells you something about what early Playboy magazine was like. It was not like anything like the porn of today. I don't know if they still publish Playboy magazine, but I know over the course of time it got to be. Yeah, it's just more and more explicit as time went on. I mean,
Ayn Rand was interviewed in Playboy magazine by Alvin Hoffler, I think.
Hoffler, yeah.
Hoffler.
And yeah, exactly. It was a magazine that had some respect at some point. And when Cyan Banister is homeless and finds, or whatever situation she was in, she finds this magazine, her reaction was, yeah, these women, I didn't realize women could be this beautiful. And she talks about her sexual awakening as well. She said, well, I had seen the Sears Roebuck catalog before that, and I thought, those people were beautiful. And she's pointing out in the lingerie, the underwear ads. And it's interesting how that progressed. And I keep saying everything gets better all the time. I'm not sure that Playboy magazine got better. There are some things, of course, that get worse over time. Absolutely. But this is actually the date on which that first Playboy magazine was published in 1953, December 1st. I've got to throw a couple of birthdays in the mix here. It's Richard Pryor's birthday. We lost him too soon in 2005. I actually thought we lost him earlier than that. He did live to be 65, but a troubled life. I've always got to give him props for his work with Gene Wilder. Mm-hmm. He was one of the script writers on Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
Originally pegged to be the co-star, but
yeah.
There were reasons in his life why that couldn't happen, so Cleavon Little did a great job with Blazing Saddles. But Richard Pryor did several movies with Gene Wilder, and they made a great comedy duo. So this was his birthday. He was born in 1940, so he was already 40 years old by 1980 in his heyday. The other birthday for today is Bette Midler, who is still with us, 79 years old, and still working. She, what was the recent thing she did? She was the voice of Grandmama. How did in the Addams Family? Grandmama. I can't say
Grandmama?
it. Grandmama, thank you. I don't know why I couldn't say that the way it's supposed to be said. Oh, well. Yes, Bette Midler is 79 years old today, still working. And The Rose. Why do I mention The Rose? I'm a big fan of her dramas or TV or films. Yeah, a little bit, but no, the answer is because that is a song that you should sing at karaoke. So Echo, if you're listening out there, you know it's one of the great songs. And you can do it as a duet by bringing the harmonies in. Absolutely happy birthday, Bette Midler. The other song that I'm celebrating today is Run with the Fox by Chris Squire and Alan White. When Yes was taking a break, the two of them did a song. It's a Christmas song. And link to it in the show notes. Lyrics by Peter Sinfield. And Chris and Alan. The lyrics were by all three of them. Peter Sinfield, some of you will know, lyrics writer for other bands. He wasn't a musician himself, kind of like Bernie Taupin, famous songwriter who was not a musician. No, I think he was a little more of a musician than Bernie Taupin was, but no, he wrote lyrics for King Crimson and other people. I think he might have done some things for Emerson, Lake and Palmer. The musos in the chat will let us know. And that's the last of the on this dates. I don't know. I've got He's So Fine in my notes here. All right, let me bring out the guitar.
All right. In the meantime, set that up, but
and you'll notice the guitar here. Look at the brand on this guitar. This guitar, I was actually going to produce a video of this guitar. This guitar cost $25.29.
Right.
$25.29 on Temu, or Temu for some of you. And this is crazy. This guitar has got no business. It's a lousy guitar. It's a $25 guitar. But it's got no business being as good as it is for $25.29. It's kind of crazy. Amy will know. When I receive a cheap guitar, when I buy a cheap guitar, I will tweak everything on it. I'll grind the nut down. I will grind the saddle down on the bridge. Normally, I would adjust the truss rod, but for those of you who know guitars, this guitar ain't got a truss rod. There is no steel rod in the neck keeping this thing straight. It's surprising it's holding up as well as it is. This came in a week ago. It actually sounds like a guitar.
That's great. Well, I mean, so what Robert does, he gets these cheap guitars and he adjusts the action on them, the little nut at the bottom of the guitar, and how basically how close the strings are. Matthew, if you're out there, you remember, I think Robert did that with the guitar you won in the auction in London a few years ago. He really fixes them up very, very nicely to where they're playable, and not just playable, but comfortable. I mean, if there's fret, what do you call it? Fret bleed.
Fret sprout, yeah.
Fret sprout. If
Sharp
the frets
grind
come
them
up,
down. You
yeah,
can do
you
it.
grind them down. You just grind them down. So there's a lot of things that Robert has done with these cheap guitars that actually make them nice. All right.
So, capo on 5 for you guitar players there. The E minor shape.
So what are we listening to right now?
So it'd be an A minor, and then the A shape, which will give you a D at the 5th fret, and then D chord. He's so fine. I have to look up the lyrics. Wish you were mine. The handsome boy over there, the one with the wavy hair. I know how to do it. Gonna make him mine. Okay, you've heard the song, or maybe you haven't heard the song, but now you have.
Yeah.
Take the capo, this little thing that's holding the strings down on a fret to change the tuning of the guitar, move it down 3 frets. Kind of the same 2 chords at the beginning there. Is that kind of the same thing?
It has a different feel to it, I think, but...
It does. It does. My sweet Lord. My Lord. Now, what was interesting to me, and I didn't realize before playing around with it, is that melody is kind of the same. Ah, da, 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 my sweet Lord. He's so fine. It's kind of the same melody.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Just in a different key.
Okay.
Well, I always recognized that, and I thought they should have let George Harrison off, because it's not a complicated melody, and the two chords, yeah, they kind of the same. But I really want to know you. That also kind of... He's so fine. I don't know how I'm going to do it,
but I'm gonna make it mine. Yeah.
And, you know, it's the same three notes for the primary melody. I'm sorry, George. I've been defending you all these years, and I still think you should have won that suit. But the point I got out of this was, it's like the McDonald's coffee in the lap case.
The hot coffee in the lap.
We all say the woman who sued McDonald's because her coffee spilled in her lap in her car, she got scalded, second-degree burns, blisters on her legs. And we think, it's hot coffee. How can you sue somebody because their hot coffee is hot and somebody put it in their lap in the car and managed to spill it on themselves? And you look into it and you find out, well, the coffee wasn't just hot. I've spilled hot coffee on myself, fresh out of the coffee maker. And, 175, 180 degree coffee, yeah, you may get welts, you may be red spots, and it's going to hurt for a long time. Well, it turns out they took a look at the coffee machine, and the water's coming out at 195 degrees. It was out of adjustment. It wasn't working the way that it should have. It was crazy hot. Should she have won that case? I would still say no. But the point is, the more you learn about it, the less outrageous it seems that there was a guilty verdict. And the nice thing about this is, when you hear about the coffee case, you think, well, wait a minute, McDonald's was innocent. Innocent at least until proven guilty. You hear about the George Harrison case, you think, well, George Harrison, he's innocent. He's writing a song. We all use the same notes. We use similar chords. Innocent at least until proven guilty, and then he was proven guilty, or at least liable. I don't think guilty is the right word.
Right.
George Harrison was never guilty of anything. If he was guilty of anything, it had more to do with Layla. Patty Boyd. We all hear that George Harrison and Patty Boyd, the ideal romance, he finds this lovely, nice, waifish blonde gal, marries her, writes love songs about her, and then his friend Eric Clapton comes along and of course falls in love with her too because she's wonderful, and eventually steals her away from George. Well, if you read George's biography, his autobiography, if you read Patty Boyd's biography, and it's generally accepted, George Harrison was not faithful to Patty. He was not a perfect husband. He was a rock star husband. And we love George Harrison, but the more you learn, the more the thing that you thought, you don't necessarily change what you thought. You just get more context. You understand it deeper. And now in this Christmas season, that is exactly what I'm trying to do. Actually, that's what I'm always trying to do. There's a great essay out there, Christmas Should Be More Commercial, by Leonard Peikoff. In fact, there are some great Christmas resources. If you're a fan of Ayn Rand, if you're an objectivist especially, there are some great Christmas resources. Before those resources came out, there were, and sometimes there still are, people suspicious of the holiday who don't regard... Here, I'm going to blacken the screen. I'm going to mute the screen for a second here.
Oh.
I need to... I've got a sniffle here that I'm going to take care of. There are people who say Christmas, but I'm not a Christian. I'm not even religious, and I don't want to support people who are religious. And then, fortunately, you can read what Ayn Rand wrote about Christmas. Maybe Amy will bring that up. You can go to the Ayn Rand lexicon and read it. Or you can read Leonard Peikoff's essay on why Christmas should be more commercial. He's not trying to drag Christmas down. He's trying to add more to it. And then you can say, oh, okay, I was right in all of my judgments and my analysis. I'm not saying that I was wrong, but I learned more. I broadened my context. Same thing with these music copyright issues. And this is going to come up and apply to everything that AI does. You may not be wrong if you have an initial impression of something, and don't criticize yourself for doing that. But there's always more to learn. This venture capitalist, this angel investor that's on, you should listen to the latest Tim Ferriss podcast where he interviews her, Cyan Banister. At some point, she became spiritual because things happened to her she couldn't explain any other way. And you've got to listen to the stories. It's not just an obvious, well, she must have been drunk, she must have been mistaken, she must have been a silly person. Listen to the interview. I'm not saying that I think there's a transcendent realm that goes above and beyond reality, but why do people believe those things? Because they're irrational, because they're foolish, because something happened they couldn't explain and they didn't come up with a better answer. No, there are better reasons to answer. And the reason why you want to go above and beyond, why you don't want to accept the simple or simplistic answer, is because you are, or should be, selfish. When people talk about transcendent experiences, you can say, well, they must be lying to themselves, or they must be irrational, or they must be falling for woo, which does happen in some cases. Sometimes that's what we're talking about. Or it can be that they are experiencing something which you deserve to experience, and rationally, in an earthly manner. Christmas is coming. This is a great season. We've been watching Christmas movies and shows and even old stuff, Charlie Brown Christmas, that kind of stuff. That stuff will get you right in the feels. And some of the times it hits you in the heart in ways that are not easily, rationally justified. There's a lot of woo out there. And sometimes the woo works anyway, even though you know it's woo. And you can say, oh, yeah, I need to kind of, not watch that stuff. Or I need to really repress those feelings and, get over it because I know they're just playing with my feelings. Or you can say, wait a minute. Big emotions, big heart, big wow, big stuff. I want it. I want it all. Bring it on. And I will figure out what the rational aspect, the reality-based aspect of that was, but I want it all. If there are people getting a thrill out of this holiday, I want that thrill. If there are people who are getting inspiration, I want that inspiration. If there are people who are feeling love, I want to feel that love. Now, there may be times when, it's so crazy. Some movie is so crazy that even if you have feels about it, you guys, no, I can't let that in. I can't let that into my mind, my mental context, my heart, whatever it is. Cool. You protect yourself. You do what you got to do. Some things deserve that. Some things deserve contempt. Some things deserve to be laughed at. But I don't know. I think we need more of it. If anybody should be inspired, excited, brought to tears, brought to laughter, man, it should be you. It should be us. It should be the selfish ones.
So earlier Robert and I were talking about this over lunch, and you mentioned the one lady who was talking to Tim Ferriss, and I'm forgetting her name.
Cyan Banister.
Yeah, and that and then she said something along the lines of, I found spirituality or spiritualism or something like that, or something that was greater than myself. Yes. And my response to that was, I have found something greater than myself. Something greater than myself is a better myself, an aspirational aspect of me. That's what I found greater than myself is myself. And that's how I see it. When I think of that, I think of those times in my life where I feel overjoyed, or I'm watching something or going to an event, or I did something really, really fantastic, and I'm just absolutely overwhelmed with the fact that I'm very happy to be existing, or I'm seeing something that is so astounding and so aspirational to me, or something that is so essentially who I am out in the world. And where I can say to myself, this is my world right now, where I'm existing, the people around me, what I am seeing, this is who I am in the world. And it is truly, I'm just, you know what, I'm midpoint in life at this point in my life. And I'm just like, you know what, I used to feel that when I was a kid. Of course, I felt a lot of insecurity, when I was younger and everything. But as I get older and everything, and I am so thrilled to be able to feel that kind of elation, that kind of joy. Not all the time, of course, and that is not, I'm not talking about how, like that kind of consistent happiness, as Ayn Rand would talk about it. But I'm really, really so very proud of myself that I'm actually able to feel those feelings still. And spiritually, that is something that that's the kind of thing that I really, 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 really worship and I love and adore. And that is actually the source. So when I watch, I think we're watching Charlie Brown Christmas, or it's Christmas Charlie Brown or something. Anyway,
Charlie Brown Christmas. Brittany just brought that up on Facebook.
Yeah. So there is a moment. Actually, another Facebook friend of mine, Wendy was talking about this, and she's like, I can't help it, but I feel such an overwhelming emotion when this particular scene is happening. And the scene, is Charlie Brown is trying to get this play together, this Christmas pageant. And everybody is just, kind of goofing off on stage, and Schroeder's playing the piano, and everybody's doing kind of a bebop 1950s dance. And finally, and the show really shouldn't be called Charlie Brown. It should be called Linus Saves Christmas, because Linus, and Charlie Brown are talking off the stage, and Charlie Brown's like, "What am I gonna do? Good grief." And Linus says, "You know what? I can talk about what the true meaning of Christmas is." And Linus gets up on stage, and it's not even so much the words or the conceptual content that he's saying, but how he is saying it. And he's saying it with such earnestness, and such sincerity, like the Great Pumpkin. And he's talking about about the normal Christmas story about Jesus and all of this, and the Star of Bethlehem, and I forget exactly what he was saying, but it was done with the music, and it was done with the Linus's voice, whoever the voice actor was just superb. And they finally, Charlie Brown finally realizes and becomes so inspired by Linus's words that he takes his little poor Christmas tree out, and he decides to decorate it. And so he actually sees hope. He sees hope for himself, for other people, and for his little puny Christmas tree that can barely stand. And so the kids gather around, and it's just such a lovely scene because they decorate the tree, and it's just everybody comes together, and everybody finally sees that it's the really, it's not about the biblical stuff they're talking about in the cartoon, but it's about goodwill towards yourself and towards others, and finding the best in yourself and finding the best in other people, and doing something about it, and making something concrete in the world, and creating this beautiful Christmas tree. And it's such a very lovely scene, and I highly recommend it. But when you're talking about these kinds of things in spirituality, it really stems from what the best within yourself and the best with other people. And that's where philosophy comes in to really, really help you to define what those are. We can get into that a little bit more, but we do have some questions to answer. It's coming up on the hour.
So, glad you mentioned that, because that leads right to my post-it note for the week. Christopher Smith in the chat says, "How deep does the objectivist rabbit hole go?" And my answer is, like a hole, you can always dig it deeper. And I think you should. Conversation's been coming up lately, online and on Zoom and in real life. You mentioned a lot about it's all about me. And in a sense, that's obviously true. You are the valuer in your life, and you are the highest value in your life. But my question, and apropos of Christopher's comment, and my post-it note for the week is, what comes next? What comes next? There's a common expression that in objectivism, among the more benevolent types, some people say, other people don't matter. What matters is you. What matters is your life. Well, most of us have seen a little beyond that. And some people will answer, no, other people are a potential value to you.
Warms the heart.
Well, that's certainly better than, just saying other people don't matter. That's secondhand to care about other people. Well, I want to ask the question, what comes next? Because once you realize that other people are a potential value, you're kind of getting closer to the truth. The truth is other people are a value. Going back to the court references we've made, other people are innocent until proven guilty. And to be innocent is not to be a zero.
Right.
If you go to a shopping mall, Amy mentioned going to a luxurious shopping mall the other day, and there's all these people, it was crowded. You are now part of something, and they are part of something that you are enjoying, that you are experiencing, and something that would not exist but for all of those other people. Now, somebody might object, well, you don't know, some of those people might be bad. Yes, that's right. But they are innocent until proven guilty. And that doesn't mean they're a zero. That doesn't mean they're neutral. No, they are a value until proven. Other people, by default, are of value. They might be a trivial value in your life, but they are part of this world being what it is. They are part of the creation of everything around you. And they are sharing this adventure with you. No, I don't think your attitude on other people, on strangers, should be neutral. It should be positive. And you shouldn't be making sacrifices. You shouldn't be going out of your way for strangers for no reason whatsoever. But it is wrong. It is irrational to say, well, other people are a zero until I know better. That's just not true. That is not a proper identification of the facts of the case. Other people, well, I've said it before and I'll say it again, other people are the second most important thing in your life. Other people are just the best. As Ruth Gordon says in Harold and Maude, I like people. They're my species. This is not speciesist for you woke folks out there. No, a different point being made there. So when I think of that, or when I think of just about anything to do with this season, I understand Christmas. I understand why Christmas should be commercial. What I want to know is, now that I understand that, or now that I've read Ayn Rand and I understand the virtue of selfishness, I understand why I am my own highest value. What comes next? That's when you start bringing in everything else, the full context, including other people and other experiences, and even things that may or may not be woo, but which can build rich experiences for you because the emotions behind them are real. I always said I should write an essay on the rational basis of well-loved woo.
Yeah, you should.
There are things that give us enormous emotional experiences, but because they are based on some irrational element, we have contempt for them and even avoid them.
Right.
I think we should be able to watch romantic comedies, for example, and enjoy the romance even if the specifics are outrageously silly, even, well, I won't go so far as to say Hallmark Channel-esque, but, a little woo, a little outrageous.
Yeah. So let me just say that, you would say, this is not 100% rational, what I'm seeing here in this movie. And then the objectivist would say, package deal.
Right.
Package deal.
Right.
And go off on it and say, rah, rah, this is, and not to say anybody in the audience who's listening right now is who would do this, but we've seen people who, what they're doing is not necessarily identifying the facts of reality here, or evaluating something, or trying to get the best out of something, or even trying to turn away from the worst. What they're doing is they're trying to justify a malevolent view of existence that they have right now, that they haven't sorted out.
And why would they do that?
Because they are afraid of the world.
Well, I'm going to put it a little more benevolently, because I think this is for those of us who've experienced this. It's not just we hate the world and we're angry all the time. It's also because, well, we've tried. We've tried being wide open and totally vulnerable with the world, and we got screwed, or we got hurt. So when I encounter this in people, I don't immediately assume, death premise, malevolent universe premise. Although sometimes that's what's going on out there. No, I think it's more just that we had to claw our way out of the altruist, collectivist, irrationalist philosophies of this world. Mm-hmm. We had to claw our way out of that. And the last thing we want to do is be vulnerable to that stuff again. Even if there are treasures to be found in arts and sports and literature and all of the magnificent things out in the world, including holidays. A great example of this. There's a film of very mixed premises out there called It's a Wonderful Life. I think we might have brought this up last week. And when somebody tells me, oh, I love It's a Wonderful Life, it's one of my favorite Christmas movies, my first reaction could be, what, you like seeing a guy sacrifice everything that he cares about? Total self-sacrifice for this small town he lives in that he doesn't even like. He wants to go to Europe. He wants to be an adventurer. But no, he settles down and sacrifices everything for people who don't even deserve it. I shouldn't use the mocking tone of voice, because there are people who, and you see this a lot in the objectivist community, people who genuinely have contempt for this film because those elements, they are actually there. There are actually those elements in that film. It is couched in altruism. There's another way to look at that film. And there are good reasons why somebody might love that movie. A side issue that I've brought up before, consider the, not our main character, but consider Potter, Henry Potter, the bad guy. The banker who's going to drive Bailey out of existence. Henry Potter, is he a self-interested capitalist? Well, he's presented as the bad guy. Robber baron type. He's mean and rich, and those traits naturally align. But the reality, and as it's presented in the film, is he is the bad guy, and he actually is bad. Henry Potter is a liar. He is dishonest. Like when Potter finds the missing money, the $8,000 that Uncle Billy has inadvertently lost, Potter knows whose property it is. But rather than return it to its rightful owner as an honest man would do, Potter keeps it. And he doesn't just keep it for the $8,000. In fact, he hangs on to it. He doesn't go out and spend it or put it in the bank. He keeps it in order to ruin the Baileys, to ruin their bank, lying about it. He lies about it. He accuses George of misusing the funds for gambling and other vices. He's a bad guy. He's not just presented as a bad guy because he's rich. No, he's actually a bad guy. And when people see the resolution of that film and they find it heartwarming and touching, what's going on? George, at the end of the film, is happily married. He loves his children. He's in a home that he's built. There may be things he wanted out of life that he didn't get. It's not entirely clear that he was serious about those. So he has not necessarily, maybe he hasn't at all, sacrificed by the end of the film. Now, I'm not going to say it's a perfect film. I'm not going to say it's a great film. It's not actually one of my favorites. But if somebody tells me they like that film, it may be because, they see a lot of altruism and sacrifice. Or it may be because they see above and beyond that and say, no, this is a guy who actually didn't really know what he wanted, and by the end of the movie, he figures it out. He also finds self-esteem. He finds the will to live because he is capable of, for example, running a bank and making it work well. yeah, there's a lot of altruism in the movie, but there's more than that. I don't just want to identify what's bad about a movie. If it does have good elements, I want to know after the bad, okay, what comes next in my thinking? What comes next in my values? Is there anything in it for me?
Yeah, and the best thing about studying philosophy and studying psychology and studying history and actually engaging in intellectual pursuits is then you'll have the vocabulary to actually figure out what you do like from something that is mixed, or something that, people don't quite interpret it in the best way possible, or to see the best within it. How can you find what's the best within somebody or some movie or something that you can take away and use for inspiration, for aspiration, for what you want to do in life, and maybe a different approach to life, way of viewing of your circumstances, ways to introspect. So the one thing I wanted a little caveat here, when I was railing against objectivists who are saying, mixed premises and package deal and all this stuff. I gotta tell you, I used to be one. I used to be very, very, not very, very, maybe just a half of a very, pretty negative. And when I was younger, and
I hope I've made it clear, you should have been.
What
I mean is that's part of the journey.
That is part of the journey, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, because for those who a little bit about my story, it was a bit of a hard knock life that I grew up with, and so it was. When I say that there are people out there who are afraid of the world, well, that was me. That was me as a teenager. That was me. Reading Nietzsche and trying to validate my negative evaluations of people. Sheeple, I mean. So, just always keep in mind, Ayn Rand would always, not always, but she would sometimes say to people, ask people, her friends, how is your universe?
Yes.
And I don't know exactly what kind of responses she got from that question, but when I was a teenager, if she asked me that, I would have said very dark, and
is it full of good people?
No, it's full of bad people. and it's very unhappy, and it's malevolent, and I have a hard time trusting people, and I have a hard time with all of this stuff. And yeah, that would be my universe at that time. If she could have asked me today, how is my universe? It's pretty darn solidly benevolent. And I'm extraordinarily proud of the fact that I can see the best of things. And I can go out there and put myself in uncomfortable situations that I will inevitably tell myself in the beginning before I even do it that things are going to go wrong, because and worry, but I push through it and I put myself into that situation anyway. And I actually find, very surprisingly, that people are pretty damn good, and people actually do see me as being a good person or competent at my job or whatever it may be. Is people can actually be objective about me. The world can see me as objective. And
yeah, and they don't have to be perfect at it. Just
right.
Decent, just good.
Yes, exactly. And I'm not looking for an exact, essay, philosophical essay about how good I am. But, a nod of the head or a good job or well done certainly suffices. So do we have questions about this, or should we go into other questions at this point?
Well, there's some good observations is all. Like Jason Adams, for example, mentions Forrest Gump, and he's questioned his initial impressions of the film, which I think is great. It's not one of my favorite movies, but it's another one of these cases where there are people who love that film, and it's worth finding out not whether what they love about it is valid, but just what they love about it. And is there a potential value in there for you? Or at least, are there motivations in finding that more positive than you might realize, even if it's not your favorite film. You know, Christopher mentions Kubrick, and I'm not a big Stanley Kubrick fan, but I get why he's very, very good at what he does, and at making the kinds of impressions and putting you through the kind of experiences he wants you to experience. It's not quite my sense of life, but he's incredibly good at what he does.
Can I make a quick clarification here? Is that when we were talking over lunch about the idea of, in objectivism, we say, well, you know what, other people can be potential values potentially, and what that implies is that people are basically either a neutral or a zero, or maybe they're even guilty until proven innocent.
And then if they're not objectivists, they're not innocent.
Right. If they're not objectivists, if
they're not perfect, they're not innocent.
Right. And I got to tell you, that is not a good train of thought or a rational train of thought.
No. And it's a complicated one because it is true that to accept any irrationality into your life at that moment, that's a bad thing to do. But how that plays out in the full context requires, think of the essay, The Cult of Moral Grayness. And Ayn Rand says, toward the end, well, some people are mixed. She says, well, yeah, but that's why you need clarity to be able to pick out. Well, here are the good parts, here are the bad parts. Here's the black, here's the white.
Yes.
Absolutely. Paul in the chat mentions a nice love comedy is The Rewrite with Marissa Tomei and Hugh Grant. A mature Marissa goes to work on Grant's character. I don't think we've seen that.
I don't think we've
And Marissa Tomei and Hugh Grant are both very charming, so it's probably going to be a film we need to watch. Jason Adams talks about Forrest Gump in there, which we did finally see. We only saw that, I think, this year, recently. Yeah, what else have you got in the chat that's sticking out for you there?
Okay, so Stephen asks, how does one get over a breakup? Well, in 25 words or less.
Time, distance, and other things. The best way to not focus on one thing is to focus on something else. But just like grief, you also just got to accept, well, a certain amount of pain is what is required to fully integrate this loss.
When you feel pain, what you're doing is you're integrating. You're integrating that person no longer in your life in this context, and then in this other context, and in this other context, and everything is painful. And then you're like, oh, God, that was that restaurant that we went and had that dinner at, and okay, more integration. So anyway, it's just a lot of pain. It's going to be okay. It's going to subside.
But that is just one element of it. Because again, the best way to not focus on one thing is to focus on something else. And not distract yourself, not blindly, but just to be able to focus on something else that is of value or that matters, is important in some way.
And you know what? If you find people in a park, holding hands with each other and being romancy, make sure you tell yourself in your mind, you know what? I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to where they're at again. And I'm not going to lose hope, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go out into the real world and find somebody for me that's better. And maybe this was actually a good thing. It's going to be painful, but eventually you may actually grow because of the experience. But always keep introspecting. Introspect and when you're done introspecting, what you do is you introspect some more. But and also immerse yourself into the world. Don't tell yourself, oh, I'm not worthy of the world anymore. You are, and you should go out and experience it to keep doing it. Next question is, did Miss Rand live in a studio apartment with Marilyn Monroe in Hollywood? I would say not. They were not the same age.
No. As I understand it, because it's been mentioned, some of the other actresses that lived in the when we say studio apartment in this context, it means an apartment that was near the movie studios. And with other actresses and people working their way into Hollywood.
It was the Hollywood Studio Club.
Hollywood Studio Club.
That was the specific thing. There were others.
Because a studio apartment also means an apartment that doesn't have a separate bedroom or a very small apartment, and that's not what we're talking. Although there may have been those in that complex. Yeah,
this is a studio club.
Yeah, so this was about the Hollywood studios. Yeah.
And Donna Reed was there, Kim Novak, Maureen O'Sullivan, Rita Moreno, a lot of people. So this was the Hollywood
It does
Studio
say
Club.
Marilyn Monroe did stay there at one point.
Yes.
But that would have been after Ayn Rand's time, I think.
Yeah.
During that period. Anyway,
Yes.
It's not mentioned that she ever met Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. But I mean, Ayn Rand did write an essay about Marilyn Monroe's death.
Yes.
I think was it Through
Your Most Grievous Fault. Yeah, very sad, but also high values. And if you aren't somebody who appreciated Marilyn Monroe, that essay, Through Your Most Grievous Fault, is worth a read to make you really appreciate what was going on there. The kind of sense of life and the unique spirit of somebody like that being surrounded not just by Hollywood, but also by politics. The things that Marilyn Monroe had to survive to get to where she was, yeah.
Yeah.
Sad, but worth reading.
Yeah, real quick about the copyright situation with George Harrison. I think that as we go through time, I think there's going to be a lot of redundancy in music.
Christopher Smith says there's only 12 notes.
Yes, and
True.
So I kind of wonder if there's going to be, like if it's going to taper off, cut, like licensing infringement lawsuits are going to maybe even disappear. I don't know, but yeah. So let's see here. We have oh goodness, a lot of stuff here. Not necessarily questions.
Yeah, Harry Binswanger, by the way, when that idea came up, he said, well, in any 6 notes, and then he gave some number, there's like 1 million possibilities in 6 notes. And I just looked it up. If we take 88 notes, the full range of a piano keyboard, 5 notes on the piano have over 5 trillion possibilities of just 5 notes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe we won't run. Of course, obviously, random 5 notes on a piano aren't necessarily going to sound good. But it is interesting to consider not just how many great songs and how many great, of course, orchestral pieces, symphonies, everything have been written, but people keep doing it. It's like, hasn't everything already been written? But somehow people come up with, and every now and then something really new and unusual and unique comes up.
Jason says that his mom would spend hours on her astrology, making zodiac charts. My mom did that as well, as a matter of fact, and got me into astrology, and then I got myself out of astrology. It is a really bad, ill-informed way of judging people's character, and it's stupid. I'll just say. I mean, it's
Wait a minute, you're saying judging their character because they believe in astrology? Or
well,
using astrology to judge their character?
Using astrology to judge people.
Right.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
I'll just say bad idea. Don't don't ask what their birthday is. Don't say what's your sun and your moon sign.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. No, judge them by their actions.
To be honest, I'm not sure which is worse, but I know which one I dislike more. The people who get into that stuff and really don't know any better and they're just lost in it, or the people who do get into it, do know better, but won't admit it, which I find much more contemptible.
Well,
the obvious example of that in people that I actually know are witchcraft, Wicca, there's kind of goofy religions they get into. And I don't mind if people get into that stuff because it's interesting, it's a hobby, they like the books, they like the art, they like all of the craft associated with it. If they're willing to admit, well, yeah, I know it's woo, it's just fun.
yeah.
It's the ones who tell you they take it seriously and kind of do, but at the same time you can tell they know it's just crap.
I mean, I know people who would say it's a way to help me introspect.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind if somebody's honest about it.
Yeah.
If somebody tells me they read tarot cards.
Right.
Because even though what they're telling me literally doesn't make sense, there's all sorts of insights I get about ambition or life and death or romance or whatever the thing is. If you tell me that's what it is. In fact, there's in this interview that Tim Ferriss does with Cyan, she carries a pair of dice. This is a great idea. I love this. Great idea. She carries a pair of dice on a necklace, on a pendant. And when she has to make a decision, she rolls the dice. Especially if it's a kind of decision there's not an obvious answer for. Which movie am I going to see? Which restaurant should we go to? And she keeps a pair of dice around her neck and rolls the dice to figure it out. If it's a binary decision, you just go even, odd. There are different ways to do that. And I heard that and I thought, well, that's irrational. That's just blindly irrational.
Not necessarily.
And it turns out it's kind of like tarot cards. If you don't literally mean you think everything's random and nothing matters, but just here is a way to handle a situation. Offload it from my mind.
Yes.
And open me up to new possibilities. Maybe I would always choose, to go to the one restaurant, but no, if I roll the dice, I'll do things that I don't even necessarily think are the best thing, but I don't always want to do the best thing because I don't always want to do the same thing. Yeah. And it's funny because she said during this interview, that's how I've been using it, but I'm thinking about applying it actually to business decisions. And she said, well, I won't do that with other people's money, other people's investments. She is a venture capitalist. But I thought, it's just like tarot cards. It's just like rational use of tarot cards, which is you don't believe any of the woo. You just use it as a tool to make decisions or to gain insights or just to remind you of, and I love this phrase, which I hope I made up, to remind you of things you already know.
Yes.
Which you couldn't have done any other way.
Yes.
That's why we do morning pages or keep diaries or do journals or write on Facebook, is because we are reminding ourselves of things we already know.
Flipping a coin.
Flipping a coin.
So what
Toss a pair of dice.
It's something that what you do is you flip the coin and you don't actually say to yourself, whatever it is, I'm going to go for it. If this restaurant is heads and this restaurant is tails, I'm definitely going to go. If you don't necessarily abide by it or obey what it says to you. What it does is that it brings your values to the forefront and why you like those particular values, and if it's there's morally optional values, for instance. Or something that, it's just, it helps you to define your values in a situation and to compare and contrast them and it will bring you kind of an emotion and say, oh, you know what? No, I really wasn't in the mood for Mexican today.
It's a great point. You flip a coin and you find out what you really wanted when you can tell, I hope it comes up this way. I hope it comes up that way.
Yes. And it's just about getting at, not just what you feel, but what you think.
Yes.
And more importantly, obviously. But no, I mean, in terms of, in terms of astrology, anything like that, it's interesting. It doesn't take you very far. And it doesn't give you the proper vocabulary to judge people.
Yes.
And sometimes it's kind of cute. It's like, I'm an Aries, and I'm really forthright, except that I'm extremely shy. But I'm not. But I am. But it doesn't, I know, does it actually apply to your life?
Yeah, Christopher says it activates the subconscious, which is certainly true.
Yes.
Equal to Reality says, Myers-Briggs is basically tarot card or astrology. We did an actual episode where we talked about Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yeah.
And other similar paradigms.
Yes.
And I think we did that. Did we do that while we were at OCon? I think so.
Yeah, I think.
I'll have to look that up and find out what I think about that.
Myers-Briggs only, again, it's one of these things where it falls short. It doesn't give you the whole vocabulary, but it does start the conversation. Actually, that is the key to all of this. It starts the conversation. Hopefully you can get to objectivism and Ayn Rand's really amazing, morality of rational egoism and the epistemology of reason, at that point.
Yes. And then once you've done that, then ask what comes next. And I mean this as seriously as I mean anything. What comes next? Once you have finally reclaimed the value of your own life, once you are ready to not just advocate the virtue of selfishness, but to live it. If you're not bringing other people into your life, you ain't selfish enough.
Yes.
If you are not bringing larger values into your life, you're not selfish enough. If you are not being ambitious, greedy for what you love most in life, and that doesn't necessarily mean money, although that too. If you are not greedy for good company, for good people, for kindred spirits, and for romance, and for family, you're not selfish enough. You're not greedy enough. So that is what I want for you. The true spirit of Christmas, the meaning of Christmas. The title of this episode is Now the Season, Now the Question. The question is, what is Christmas? What is this all about? And the answer is to steal the phrase, goodwill toward men and women. And what does that mean? It means 1,000 things. And you should be greedy. You should be selfish. You should be greedy to find out what those 1,000 things are. All of the ways in which you can get value out of engagement, out of people, out of being out there in the world with people, out of trading with people, out of looking at all of the things around you and realizing other people made 99.9% of this happen. And I'm great because I earned the money to exchange with them and bring all of these miracles into my life. But other people, I like people. They're my species. And they are the source of, the most isn't the right word, the most of the values in my life. You are the source of most of the values in your life, taken hierarchically. But you are surrounded by the products of other people. And to hell with the products, you should be surrounded by other people. You got to find those kindred spirits. If you're at a point in your life where you see that mostly remotely or online, that's fine too. But get you some. The goodwill, the good stuff is out there. And I want you to get you some. And that's all I've got to say. Is there anything else in the chat that we should answer real quick before we wrap up?
I think that's all the questions. I think we answered all the questions.
Well, I missed
Why? Because we're the best.
There's a few things in the chat that I would, but I will be going over the chat. I'll be answering some of those on the socials. I always copy and paste these at the end of the show because it takes YouTube a day or two to reproduce the chat after a live show. Thank you. Thank you for all of your comments, all of your stuff, your insights. And that's it.
Yes.
If you have suggestions for future episodes of this show between now and Christmas and even after that, Christmas, December 1st. It's here. It is here. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Send those to the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. Put them in the chat. Send us an email. Engage with us on the socials. We are wide open and incredibly vulnerable and awfully sensitive. No, really, in all the right ways. If you want to support the show, it's the giving time of year. What is Tuesday? This coming Tuesday is Giving Tuesday, the day after Cyber Monday. If you have any money left in the bank, go to patreon.com/Robert Nasir. Become a patron. Thank you to those of you who are already patrons of the show, who give us your love every month. Could be $2, could be $200. Whatever it is, we look at that every month and say, oh man, these good people.
Yes.
And that's it. All that's left for me to do is to wish you...
Before you do, remember, everybody, this is a season of giving, of course. Well, not really. It's a season of valuing. Actually, should be all year round. But more specifically, it's heightened during the season of goodwill. And as Leonard Peikoff said, the first duty of justice is to defend and acknowledge the good, or to defend and praise the good. And if you, in your Santa wisdom, find us a value in your life, please go to take it seriously. Go to robertnasir.com. Take your value seriously. Take this time that we spend together every Sunday seriously. Go to Patreon. Go to robertnasir.com. We've got PayPal and Patreon. If you would like to go ahead and send us a little Santa Christmas present.
I guess my request to throw money wasn't good enough.
I just wanted to bring that out because,
I just want to give
special.
you all out there the opportunity. The chance to put the praise out there. Well, thank you, Amy. She's absolutely right. Those of you who are patrons of the show, really, you are the best. We do appreciate it. All the rest of you are second best. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But we do appreciate it, and it does matter. And it is one of the reasons why, after almost 5 years, this show still goes on. Can you imagine? 5-year anniversary next March. Crazy, crazy stuff, but too much fun. And whether you give, whether you don't, you really are the best audience in podcasting. And that is why we wish you every success, every joy that you so richly deserve in this holiday season. I can't believe it's December. This is so good, so cool. And if you are one of those folks who are taking this lesson, this idea to heart, that means you're out there engaging with people. You're out there finding those kindred spirits. You're out there having a drink with somebody, having a meal with somebody, going to a conference, going to a show, whatever. You are out there finding what we wish for you, and that is, we wish you love.